Have you ever shared your dinner with a friend who is hungry? Then you're more like a vampire bat than you might have thought. Vampire bats practice hematophagy, which means they feed exclusively on blood. But unlike their mythical counterparts, vampire bats don't actually suck blood. Instead, they use their razor-sharp teeth to bite mammals, typically horses and cows, although sometimes humans, and then lap up the blood that escapes from the wound. Fortunately for their victims, vampire bats don't take enough blood to kill. But finding enough blood to eat isn't always easy. Vampire bats hunt on most nights, but if they're unsuccessful for more than 2 nights in a row, they will starve to death. Fortunately, vampire bats, just like people, are often willing to help their friends. In fact, to prevent a fellow bat from starving, female vampire bats will sometimes regurgitate a portion of their most recent blood meal into the mouths of nearby female vampire bats. But proximity alone doesn't guarantee this behavior. Vampire bats use a practice called reciprocal altruism. They learn to recognize bats who've shared with them in the past, and they only share with them. This includes familial relatives and current or former roostmates. Basically, they're friends. So far in the wild, scientists haven't found any evidence that male vampire bats participate in this food-sharing process. And while the reason for the divide between sexes isn't completely understood, what is clear is that female vampire bats, like humans, get by with a little help from their friends.
Chapter 15: Fostering Fruitful Friendships. The Art of Shee. In this chapter, understanding the importance of relationships to the Chinese, making connections with business people and government officials, noting why you can't depend solely on Shee. Many Westerners have heard that relationships are critical to doing business in China. In fact, in the West, a great deal of mystique surrounds the way business relationships work in this corner of Asia. Make no mistake about it, relationships are important to doing business in China. However, they're not significantly more important than they are in the West. This chapter explains that what these relationships are, what benefits they can bring, and how to effectively develop them. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Introduction: Shee. The Chinese term for relationships, which we use throughout this book, is Shee. Shee has no literal translation to English, but generally the Chinese use the expression Shee. You have Shee to mean that someone has a particular relationship or is generally well connected. The bottom line is that you either have it or you don't. And you definitely want to have Shee. In some ways, doing business with Shee is similar to the way people do business in the West. Shee is a more muscular form of the principle that it's not what you know, it's who you know. Shee is mainly based on trust and the understanding that favors should be returned, which are also important in Western business relationships. However subtle and important differences crop up between the way these factors work in the West and in Chinese Shee. The following sections help you understand those differences. In the end, a good business plan can succeed without Shee, although you're likely to develop good Shee as you succeed, because everybody loves a winner. Likewise, a bad business plan will fail even with the best possible Shee. See Chapter 4 for more about planning for China. Trusting performance. Parties must trust each other in order to have Shee. No, they don't need trust because they're doing something illegal and have to trust each other to keep quiet. The trust upon which Shee rests is broader and more about common sense. For example, if an official with whom you have Shee promises to expedite an approval process, he or she trusts that you have your documentation in order and that your application doesn't contain any surprises. China has neither credit reporting agencies nor a better business bureau, so good information on potential business associates is hard to come by from official sources. This situation makes Guan that much more necessary for doing business. Trust is an important factor because, as we discuss later in the chapter, Chinese business people frequently recommend their business contacts to one another. If a business person provides a reference for somebody who subsequently does a bad job, then the referring person ends up looking bad, and his or her Guan weakens. Guan based on implied reciprocity is based on implied reciprocity. Many Westerners have the misconception that if you buy the right Chinese officials, you can accomplish anything. Although China, like all countries, has a certain level of corruption, officials can be paid off are the exception, not the rule. That said, expecting something in return when you make an effort on someone else's behalf is human nature. In practice, people with whom you have Wan Shi will usually help you while expecting something in return in the future. In other words, if the Chinese party thinks you can help them in the future, you can help in the future, he or she will view the favor as an investment. This practice may be analogous to the scene in the first Godfather movie where Vito Corleone promises to help the funeral parlor owner. In the scene, Corleone says he'll help the parlor owner get revenge, but that he may someday call upon the parlor owner to pay back the favor. Unlike The Godfather, though, in Wanshi, the Chinese person is unlikely to come right out and tell you that he or she expects something in return.
I I went to the police like a good American. These two boys were brought to trial. The judge sentenced them to 3 years in prison and suspended the sentence. Suspended the sentence. They went free that very day. I stood in the courtroom like a fool. And those two bastards, they smiled at me. Then I said to my wife, for justice, we must go to Don Corleone.
Why did you go to the police? Why didn't you come to me first?
What do you want of me? Tell me anything, but do what I beg you to do.
What is that? That I cannot do.
I'll give you anything you ask.
We've known each other many years, but this is the first time you ever came to me for counsel, for help. I can't remember the last time that you invited me to your house for a cup of coffee. Even though my wife is godmother to your only child. But let's be frank, you never wanted my friendship. And you were afraid to be in my debt.
I didn't want to get into trouble.
I understand. You found paradise in America. You had a good trade, made a good living, police protected you, and there were courts of law. But you didn't need a friend like me. But now you come to me and you say, Don Corleone, give me justice. But you don't ask with respect. You don't offer friendship. You don't even think to call me Godfather. Instead, you come into my house on the day my daughter's to be married and you ask me to do murder for money.
I ask you for justice.
That is not justice. Your daughter is still alive.
Let them suffer then, as she suffers. How much shall I pay you?
Buonasera. Guan said, what have I ever done to make you treat me so disrespectfully? If you'd come to me in friendship, then the scum that ruined your daughter would be suffering this very day. And if by chance an honest man like yourself should make enemies, then he would become my enemies. And then they would fear you.
Be my friend? Godfather?
Good. Someday, and that day may never come, I'll call upon you to do a service for me. But until that day, accept this justice as a gift on my daughter's wedding day.
Grazie, Godfather.
Prego. Give this to Clemenza. I want reliable people that aren't going to be carried away. I mean, we're not murderers, in spite of what this...
Calling in favors for a speedy response. Guan sometimes can help with relatively mundane tasks. Here's a story of one businessman from Taiwan who's based in Shanghai. When he moved into his new apartment, he called the phone company, a monopoly, to install broadband internet. The phone company told him that it had no broadband lines available and that he should call back the next day. The next day, the story was the same. As was the day after. The day after that, and the day after that. Finally, he got so frustrated that he went to the office where the internet installation scheduler worked. He went to the scheduler's office and pleaded his case. The scheduler unsympathetically opened his scheduling book, looked through it for a moment, and then said, "I'm sorry, but we have no lines available." The businessman left in a huff. The man then called a friend who had previously told him that he knew people at the phone company. The friend placed the phone call, and within a few days the internet was installed. Repaying favors. Beyond gaining someone's trust, you have to figure out how to repay the favor. The range of possibilities is endless, from sharing a few drinks or dinner to helping an official's relatives find jobs, hopefully not with your company. Some repayment obligations may not be worth the favor you're getting. Carefully weigh what you can do to repay and are comfortable with before accepting favors. Never offer money when asking for a favor. Offering a bribe is highly insulting to all but the most corrupt officials. In addition, bribing or attempting to bribe a foreign government official may violate your home country's laws, such as the United States Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Shee isn't about bribes and corruption. It's about developing long-term mutually beneficial relationships that can help your business grow and profit in China. Beyond bribes, offering up an obvious quid pro quo when asking for a favor is usually bad form. If you have a commercial arrangement to propose, that's fine. Don't couch it in terms of doing favors though. One of the crucial aspects of developing Shee is to constantly think about how you can help people you know. You shouldn't forget when people do favors for you, and you should try to do even small favors for them without being asked. When thinking about the possible ways to grant or repay a favor, keep the following ideas in mind. At the time that somebody does you a favor, she may not have any specific repayment in mind. She may simply feel you're going places and may be able to help her down the road. Asking whether she can use your help in any way doesn't hurt. She may tell you not to worry about it, but don't take such a denial literally. Be ready to repay the favor when you see an opportunity. Often you make the repayment over time, though not always. For example, you may know a certain person who'd be a good introduction for your new Chinese contact. To develop Shee with your new contact, introducing this person early in the relationship may be a good starting point. Even small favors such as editing some English for a person's business or advising him on a trip to your country are appreciated and can help you build your Guan shee. Most people prefer to develop ongoing relationships rather than doing mutual one-off favors. At the start of a relationship, try to think of what your obligations may eventually amount to. Depending on whom you're dealing with, you may not be comfortable receiving favors from a particular person. Once your obligations are very important, and you risk seriously offending someone if you refuse a later request for help. Therefore, it's vital that you assess who is offering to help you and think about whether you really want to help him or her later. The best way to deal with a request you're uncomfortable with is to avoid putting yourself in that situation in the first place. If you do find yourself in that situation or such situation though, refuse without using very direct language to help the other party save face. See chapter 11. In many cases, rather than saying you can do it, it's better to say something to the effect of it may be difficult. Then try to think of a compromise you're comfortable with. Of course, you can't make everybody happy all the time. Developing Guan shee in government and business. Many foreigners may find it unusual that in China having relationships with both business people and government officials is a good thing. Even maintaining a friendly relationship with a relatively low-ranking government employee can pay off. The People's Republic Guan shee with government officials. Guan shee with government officials can be quite helpful in China, especially when you need to navigate the opaque processes and bureaucracies of the Chinese government. If you develop relationships with the right officials, they may be able to advise you in advance about whether you're likely to receive an approval, or alternately tell you what you need to do for approval. This boost can spare you a lot of time and money. Expedite the approval process in certain situations. Use a favorable interpretation of the law to help you. For example, an official may read the law in a way that gives your business the most favorable tax treatment possible, keeping in mind that the national and local governments have complicated tax schemes to provide incentives for the development of certain industries. Tell you about the future developments that may be important to your business, such as road construction or possible changes in the law. Guan shee also may come into play when submitting competitive proposals for a project such as property development. Having a good relationship with the deciding officials definitely gives you an edge. Westerners commonly misunderstand why having good Guan shee with the government is so important. The main point is that Guan shee won't get officials to break rules for you. Instead, it may get them to use the rules' inherent flexibility to help you out. The people Guan shee with the Chinese business people. The Chinese are more inclined to mix relations, friendships, and business than most Westerners are. In fact, many Chinese prefer to do business with people they're comfortable with. Otherwise, the Chinese prefer to do business with people their friends can vouch for. Although using such connections is normal in the West, the difference is that a personal validation that's unrelated to business, for instance, Shang is a good guy, may carry almost as much weight as a business one. Shang did a great job installing my plumbing. This idea is an important application of the trust factor of Guan shee. Although the person vouching for Shang may not know firsthand whether he's a good contractor, she's comfortable with Shang and trusts that Shang does a good job in his business because of the way he handles himself in their personal dealings. Therefore, if you develop a good Guan shee with business people, they may refer customers to you. As always though, remember the principle of reciprocity. You may need to hire at least some of the suppliers that they refer to you. One of the most common business favors is to give or receive introductions to one's contacts. Asking for an introduction or for other reasonable favors is fair game, provided you believe the other person is comfortable with you and will be comfortable with the favor you're asking. You might want to be a bit indirect though, if you haven't known the person you're asking that long. For example, instead of asking for an introduction to Miss Shu, you may want to ask whether the other person can introduce you to someone who can help you with such and such. People often provide introductions over a meal. In China, friends rarely split bills. They take turns paying. If someone is giving you an introduction, remember who's doing whom the favor. You should pay for the entire bill if the meal is just the three of you, provided that the person arranging the meal lets you do so.